Start standing right there so we have the face on.
No, I don't want to. No one needs to see my face.
Or Jerry, go sit up front so we can see your face.
You're much prettier than I am, and younger.
You are being recorded as well.
Just call me pretty. Say that in the speaker. No, mate.
That's fair. We'll hold that against it.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for coming this morning. My name is Scott, City Administrator. I'm going to go through our presentation today, talking about Phase 2 of the Bayfield Street project. Here today, we do have a couple council members present, Karen and Carl, and future council member as well. So we'll here to listen and gather your comments. Also here we have Tony, Assistant Administrator, Jerry, Public Works Director. It's not plowing snow today. So the Bayfield Street project, let's get into it. Phase 2. So this is from 2nd Avenue West. So this intersection right up here between the condos and hopefully future brew pub down to Superior Avenue. That is the project limits for Phase 2. Phase 1, of course, is the west side. That begins next year. So we're working with the DOT. They're going to be replacing the street. We have to replace the utilities in this section. When is Phase 2 going to begin? Originally, we had planned for Phase 2 to begin in 2026. However, the DOT has a lot of projects right now, and they were reshuffling, and they recommended to move to 2027. From the city's perspective, it was not thrilled with the idea of having an unfinished city for 3 years. However, part of this is a funding issue for us as well. When we put this slide together, or presentation together, we did not know some of this information, so things are constantly evolving. But there was one significant funding source that we were hoping to get that we did not get. And the other funding sources that we have to go for require a 3-year window between application segments. So 2027 will most likely make financial sense for the city because we're looking at significant dollars. We know Phase 1 is a $4 million project for us. And Phase 2 is probably going to be about the same, if not more, by that time. That far exceeds our borrowing capacity. So we have to find funding to assist with both of these phases. So that's very important for us. So not to put us into a bind, at this point, we'll be recommending to the council that 2027 is when this project will begin. It will be a complete year of construction from April through October. It will take at least that long to do it. Our proposed detour route at this time is to route all traffic both ways, going up Washington Avenue and out to Mackey Road. This is going to be a difficult detour and very difficult in the businesses in this area. The unfortunate thing with the layout of Washburn is there's not a through route, a good alternative in this area. If we went down Third Avenue East, routing all traffic down a residential neighborhood, that's not ideal either. And that exits still within the project boundary. So it's a very difficult project to detour, and it's going to be a challenge for us to have direct traffic and local access for those businesses. So we have a lot of work to do on that and planning and preparing for that. So I'm not, if anyone has any other ideas that we haven't thought of, by all means, but we're just not seeing a good option for this project. As I mentioned, the DOT will reconstruct the road. They'll put in new curb and gutter. As far as sidewalks, they will replace the sidewalks that need to be removed because of the project, how far we have to dig out. As we go further down on East Bayfield Street, the right-of-way is a little wider than it is on the west side of town. So on the west side of town, all the sidewalks will be replaced, but as we go further out, they may not be replacing all of the sidewalks. So if the city wants to have them replaced, that's going to be a city expense. And how we do that will be subject to some debate yet. But we'll discuss sidewalks in a little bit. And as I mentioned, the city is going to be responsible for the water, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer upgrades for this project. A few other things that we have been talking about. The concrete terraces. And what I mean by the concrete terrace is the area between the sidewalk and the roadway, sometimes referred to as a boulevard. We have some inconsistencies. Some of them are concrete, some of them are grass. So in the interest of uniformity, we're looking at concrete terraces from the project beginning, 2nd Avenue West through 2nd Avenue East. From there, anything would be, if we have sidewalks, it would be grass. That's what has been discussed and is in place at this time, unless the council would change that. Streetlights. Decorative streetlights would go to 1st Avenue East. 1st Avenue East is the intersection just right where the ironworks begins. So the style has already been picked for phase 1, so that would continue and extend to that area. The other items that and what we really want to discuss today and talk about in a little more detail are some of the options. And I'm not saying that we're going to do any of these. We're getting your opinions on these matters because we have to tell the DOT what do we want. And the council needs to make a decision on this. And so purpose of these sessions is to, how do you feel about this? So we're going to talk a little bit about turn lanes. We're going to talk about bump outs, sidewalks, and other potential decorative features. Keeping in mind any of these things that we do, we'll be paying for ourselves. So turn lanes. Right now in this phase of the project, the only existing turn lane is a right-hand turn lane that goes into Memorial Park. At this time, our recommendation is to keep that right-hand turn lane going into Memorial Park. The question then is, are there any other locations that should have either a right or left-hand turn lane? For example, should we create a left-hand turn lane coming from Bayfield to turn into Memorial Park, or say at Central Avenue, or vice versa? This is what we would need to figure out. Keep in mind that if we place a turn lane, it will restrict parking on the street at that particular location where the turn lane is placed. Okay. Bump outs. As you can see on the picture on the screen, bump outs are an extension of the sidewalk and curb through the parking lane. It's intended to be a safer for pedestrians to cross the highways. The pedestrians are more visible. There are pros and cons to bump outs. So besides enhancing pedestrian safety, they can calm the traffic, they can slow the traffic, they can help prevent passing on the right, which has been a common issue in Washington. The cons to bump outs, they are difficult for plowing and our snowplow drivers to deal with. And it's also more difficult for larger vehicles, semis, trailers, to make that turn radius. So it's a toss-up on that. We'll tell you that in phase one, there are 2 intersections that will have bump outs here at Washington Avenue and 3rd Avenue West. Those were the only 2 locations that were selected to have bump outs. If you wanted to consider bump outs, we would suggest that you consider 3 potential locations. We'll discuss the first 2 here at East 6th Street and East 3rd Street. So we'll go to the map. So East 6th Street is the intersection that turns down into Memorial Park. Now, if you were to do bump outs at this intersection, we would recommend only doing them on the east side of the highway. The east side of that intersection, I should say. Reason being was as we just said, we have the right-hand turn lane on the west side of that, so it's hard to have a bump out and then have that right-hand turn lane. Those two things just don't go together. The other reason why we suggest just the east side of that intersection, with the hopeful proposed housing development up at the near the nursing home on Superior Avenue, and we'll get into this in a little more detail. We're having some discussions of whether or not we would have sidewalk connection out to that location on the highway, and then this would be, people could walk down the highway, and then this would be a crossing area into the Memorial Park. There is existing sidewalk on that east side of that intersection that goes down towards Memorial Park. Next one. The other location, the next location, would be 3rd Avenue East. 3rd Avenue East is the area that we have the athletic fields to the south. We have Jackie's Field Park up there to the north. In this location, if you were to do bump outs, we would suggest doing them on the west side of the intersection, where we have adequate space to do improvements that would then lead down towards the athletic field area. Any questions on any of that so far? Okay. Go back to where we were here.
Next one.
Yes. Let's talk a little bit about sidewalks. The other location we're going to get to is Central Avenue, but let's talk a little bit about sidewalks. So as I already mentioned, we discussed concrete terraces from 2nd Avenue West to 2nd Avenue East. And then the question is, should we have a continuous sidewalk that extends out to Superior Avenue? This would connect potentially with a proposed housing development and allow people to be able to walk essentially the entire length of the city, connect with other trails and plans going into the future. There are intermittent sidewalks in some of this location already. A lot of it is overgrown. And also the issue that we're going to have to address here, and we're working with the DOT to resolve, and it's going to be dependent on what does the community want. This area is a rural cross section of the road, meaning it's not curb and gutter. So there's the highway, there's a ditch, and then there's the sidewalk. Is that how it's going to be in the future, or would curb and gutter be added as part of this project? So we're not sure about that yet, and that's subject to some debate, but the sidewalk question may focus that debate. Of course, property owner is responsible for the maintenance of sidewalks, removal of snow, and the city has been discussing internally, and we have to push this debate out there soon. How are we going to pay for sidewalks? Historically, they've been specially assessed to the adjacent property owners. Is that fair? It's really going to depend on where in the city are we going to have sidewalks. That's a very nebulous topic, and the city is going to be having that debate in probably this next year or two. Do we want sidewalks everywhere, or do we just want to have sidewalks in key locations? Because they are expensive. They are difficult to maintain, especially in the winter. And the city does not have the capability to remove snow on everybody's sidewalk. There's just no possible way we could keep up with that, especially in a year like this. Any other questions on sidewalks? Okay. Central Avenue. Connection right there between the club and the museum. Access down to the marina. So it has significant traffic at that intersection compared to most of the other intersections. The question is, one, do we want to have any sort of bump outs at that intersection? And or any sort of other decorative features? And I'm not saying that it has to be the decorative features that we are showing on the screen here, but you have to come up with something if you want to have a decorative crosswalk, a decorative pattern in the roadway, anything like that. Keep in mind that it's going to be city's maintenance, but if you want, and it will take a little bit to maintain that for sure. How it will look in 20 years, if it has to be replaced, that would be our expense. But if you want something nice, this is the opportunity to consider placing that. As far as bump outs, there is one bump out currently at the intersection, can we go to the map again, please? There is a partial bump out, I should say, currently at that intersection on Central Avenue there by the museum. And the question is, would you want bump outs at that intersection, all four corners of the intersection, or not? Again, would make it more difficult for traffic, making larger vehicles or trailers with boats or something like that to make turns. However, the alternative would need to be, say, semi-traffic trucks making deliveries to the hardware store would essentially need to go down the alley, cross the alley, continue behind Legion Park, and then turn and come out First Avenue East. Boats would essentially need to go down First Avenue East as well and kind of round their way down to the marina. There's a large load. That would have to be the alternative route for larger vehicles if you wanted to have something like that. Another thought that has been floated, and I'm not saying this is a good idea or a bad idea, but if this is the time to consider it, would be the possibility of closing off the north part of Central Avenue between the club and the museum. Currently, we have a farmer's market there in the summertime. This would essentially make it a permanent community gathering plaza type area. Design would have to be done, but if you wanted to consider something like that, this would be the time to start planning for it. So, in addition to some of these ideas, another suggestion that we had was, and I don't know how people feel about this. Some communities have done imprint. There was an idea of poetry in the sidewalks, stamped words, letters of poetry inside the sidewalk. You'd have to consider that. How is that going to be? Shoveling, maintenance, things of that. How will that hold up? But if anyone has any other decorative ideas or things to consider, again, now is the time to throw it forward and for us to consider. So. All right. So that's where we are at. We need to decide on turning lanes. We need to decide on pedestrian crossings and styles and any other decorative amenities. We're gathering information. We're recording this session. I'll record tonight's session as well. We'll put it online to reach a broader audience. And we're going to give people a week basically to turn in the little questionnaire that we're handing out to get your thoughts on these topics, because the council, most likely here in April, will need to start making some decisions on these things. The DOT is waiting on us. We're supposed to have this done already. It takes time to put this together, and snow and wet. But we're here now to answer any questions that you have on the project on these topics, or if you have other questions related to the project, I'm happy to answer. Oh,
What about the mail?
Mail access and so forth. So the DOT needs to keep access to all the businesses. Even though the road may be closed, there will be crossover traffic at the intersections. So you can cross from one side of the city to the other. And there needs to be pedestrian traffic as long as possible to each of the homes and businesses along the construction route. Now, there will be a period of time, of course, if they happen to be working directly in front of that particular location where it's going to be difficult for those few days. But overall, there still needs to be access to each home and business.
Next question, are you gonna start on the east end of town, or are you gonna start here?
Project would begin at this location, and that's because of the sewer. We have to start at the lowest location and work our way out. So we'll start here and move towards Superior Avenue.
When you say unfinished in between the two phases, what exactly does that mean? I imagine there's not going to be a stoppage in the road still or anything like that.
No, the road will be, it's just that you're gonna have two different, styles of, you're gonna have, oh, this looks nice, and then you're gonna drive, what happened here?
Sure.
So.
Still functioning.
And the street lights will be different too.
Yes, yeah, gotcha.
Go ahead.
You mentioned earlier that the sidewalks will be replaced as they are needed to complete the project. Do you know which areas those are that will be impacted?
I cannot say specifically. My guess at this point is at least everything probably from out to 2nd Avenue East is what I anticipate at this time.
The follow observations have been on the corner on Central Avenue for over 28 years. And believe me, the traffic coming from, we'll call it east side, turning down to the Cold Rock and the Marina is very heavy, all seasons. Snowmobiles now, boaters in the summer. I strongly recommend the right-hand turn lane dedicated, sort of right in front of the timeout now, and no bump out over there, because you'll totally clog that road. And in my over 28 years being on that corner, both living and working there, I see trucks constantly going to Olson's lumber. You're basically, I don't know where those huge trucks, when you go to turn, would be closed off that avenue with put bump outs there. They have a hard time now.
Those are good points.
I like the idea of what you're talking about with the bump outs there, but I'm wondering if there's any discussion of doing something like that, maybe down by the post office or something in that area where you have the traffic going to the schools, people picking up their mail, just throwing it out there as an idea. Also, my house is at the very end of Bayfield Street, right before Superior Street, and I strongly would encourage a sidewalk of some kind continuing to that side of town. The traffic speed picks up there. People don't pay attention to the speed limit. There's a lot of kids that walk there, people walking their dogs, bikers. It's not really a safe situation the way it is. Some feedback.
I'm just here representing the club, and we had a board meeting last night, and it was unanimous that we feel Central Avenue should not be shut down. When the cultural center and the club have something going on, there is no place to park, and especially this winter with these big snowbanks, you can't even park on the highway. And so our vote is that we don't close Central Avenue. I think it's a great place for the farmers market, and maybe we make it look a little different and we close it occasionally, but not leave it closed.
Good stuff to write down.
I'm just concerned about maintenance for a lot of these things. So I was excited when I saw the poetry thing, but I didn't think about it. What is it going to look like in 20 years? I have budget rather than trying to fix this. So, and then also as far as the area, she was just talking about how when I first saw the parking there, but then also, it sounds nice, but what is it going to look like all winter? It's going to have to be maintained all winter as far as snow and everything, and is it going to be used? So I just think we need to be really, I think we need to be really conscious of what it's going to look like in 10 to 20 years, and the maintenance of it in the winter, but also my question is, how long do sidewalks typically last? If that goes into this.
Do you want to take a crack at that?
I mean, before you start, on the fact sheet, there's the intersection, decorative is there as well. We didn't have that in the slideshow, but both of these are in Cheyenne, Wyoming. So an area that gets snow as well. I don't know how long they've been there or how they've lasted, but that is an area that, has a northern climate as well.
And we looked at this and debated this when we were on phase one, if we wanted to say the council's already talked about colored concrete in the terrace area as a decorative strip. And we looked at that as well. Previous community that I was at, we did that when I was there. That part hasn't held up well. It's cracked and crumbled. The regular sidewalk is held up pretty good, but if it's not done quite right, it will need to be replaced. And that stuff is a little more expensive. What will cost be in 20 years? I don't wanna don't wanna know.
I was the one who put together the information about posted sidewalks, just as a brainstorming addition to any thoughts and possibilities. And since I put this together, I found out who the sign company is, who apparently for all these municipalities makes the mold or the imprint of the words that would go in. And it's located in Badness Heights, Minnesota. And so I talked to the person today about how cost is determined, and it's based on the font you choose and the size, and also basically the layout that you want and so forth. So there's the contact person, and he might know from talking to the various municipalities whether they've had problems with the longevity or maintenance or whatever. So that'll be pretty different.
Jerry, do you have any additional thoughts on the wear and tear and stuff?
So the average lifespan for sidewalk, all depends on the prep and everything else, but generally a sidewalk is pretty much like a road. It's got a 20-year lifespan. When you go to the colored concrete, depending on how they're going to install this, generally when they do colored concrete in a pattern like this, the concrete's actually colored, so it's a cut section that's taken out and then they report to that color. There is some maintenance to it to help keep it sealed and retain that color, but I would say that if you got 12, 14 years on a colored imprint through into the concrete, before it would have to be replaced, or at least taken out and then like they'll grind a section it out and report, but that generally isn't a good route to go. But in this project too, you have to send the state. This is a 50-year road project, so once the state completes this, the maintenance on that aspect of it is ours until they come back to redo it. So is it a little expensive? Yes, but like Scott said, if you're ever going to do it, now's the time to do it. And nobody can determine 20 years from now, what the cost is going to be to repair this or replace it. But it's just definitely, you're looking at 12, I would say 12, 14 years. It would have to be replaced, or you would just let it go at that point. The color will bleach out and
It's always nice to have this, but it's not worth it. Take your monies and put it towards something else. But this is, decorative, that's fine, that's all nice, but if it's gonna cost this much money and cost me this much money, this is ridiculous. I'd say take that money and put it somewhere else. I cannot see putting imprints in the sidewalk. Guys are covered up 5, 6 once a year. This is ridiculous. I take a walk every day, 3 to 5 miles every day. Very seldom do I walk on any of your sidewalks here in town. I tell you, I have to walk on the street, and if I don't walk on the street, I'm gonna break my leg. This is ridiculous, just put this colored stuff in there, imprints in there. Holy, I can't see doing that. That's my own personal thought. I mean, everybody in here, oh, no, we gotta have that. They're probably saying that. Other people are saying no. I'm saying no, I don't want that, personally. Take a vote.
Currently, there is not a crosswalk at Sixth Avenue taking you into the park. Instead of a bump out, a crosswalk lanes there, so people are aware of, and likely even, the traffic, speed limit being lowered there would be much more beneficial than putting in a bump out. That's my suggestion.
Crosswalk paintings is something that we can deal with. Requesting speed limit changes is something that we have to request to DOT.
The DOT is doing the project, so, especially given, especially given the housing project, to, but reduce speed there might be something different.
Right, and some of those factors, as they happen, will require some changes.
Alex, and talk about the bump outs too. I've worked in the pump for 4 or 5 years. Almost been hit a couple of times already crossing, and I don't think that signs and stuff like that probably get mentioned and stuff like that. It's physical obstructions that are going to be visible all year during the winter. I think that's how we're going to do it, and it also has implications for when people drive through this town and what we're thinking about tourism and all of that stuff. Our concern is to make traffic just flow through easily and fast. They're not going to know it's no more park. I mean, by the time you get out there, you're driving right by. But if there's bump outs, it's going to say, hey, there's something here. And it's also walking down from our house down to Memorial Park. You know, it doesn't even visibly appear as something that is important to the town. It's just by traffic count. There's no sidewalks. And then on the maintenance part, I'm also thinking at the school. Anytime we're looking at sidewalk, longevity and all of that stuff, I think we can take a few years off of it, or years, probably just do a number on those curves and everything. I am concerned about the maintenance of the pump outs, but I think it's important for a lot of reasons.
Scott, I want to talk about the timing. If a decision needs to be made in April, is that with the thought of a 2026 timeline? If it's 2027, is April really the last time that input and decision can be made?
My response to that question is April an absolute no? We're a little behind if we're behind if this was a 2026. Correct. If it's 2027, we're right on track. So if the DOT sees that we are making progress, they're pushing because they're trying to get their preliminary plans together. If we can make some decisions, if we have to discuss something a little bit more, but as long as we are making progress on that, we can probably appease them for a couple more months. But we do have to make a decision yet this summer, for sure.
Meaning what, before June? Kind of,
give or take. There's, it's a little ebb and flow as to how much I can push.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's just that, okay, thank you.
I was just going to add, of course, the decision makers will make their decisions, but the cost of any imprint could easily be borne by grants. So it would be
potential options.
Also, as I've been a long-term member of the Washington Housing Authority and having a problem with ringside seats in the attempts to put in this potential housing project, it is not by any ways or means a given. This is a very, very competitive process in which there have been lots of applicants throughout the state. Will Washburn get it? Maybe, maybe not. I would caution making decisions and plans thinking there's going to be a housing project there, because there may not. Maybe, there may not.
Sure. It's a valid point. We would certainly like to see something, but
I would too.
Other comments, thoughts?
I was just gonna,
Go ahead.
if I may, ask what the concrete terraces, if they're not there now, what do the dogs and the dog walkers do when they're walking along and they're only climbing concrete? Is that an issue?
Well, I haven't, that has been brought forward as a problem to me, so. I mean, there's grass on the other side, but I mean, it's always expected that dog owners pick up after themselves, so.
But not the urine.
Yeah.
Are there trees that are going to be removed along the route?
You can expect the existing trees that are in that terrace area would be removed. Are there plans to replace them? No. There is another group that is, the Plan Commission is looking at and plans to survey some of the business owners and so forth as to whether or not we wanted to have other options, other beautification items that are not necessarily part of this project that we can do afterwards, be it large planters or things like benches and the banners and those other types of aesthetic items that are the DOTs. That's our problem. That's what they're going to say. But there's another group that will be working on some of that. Trees in the terrace may look nice in summer, but again, it is another maintenance issue and concern. They're difficult to keep alive, particularly with the salt and so forth. So the recommendation is to, at this point, not to have trees in the along the roadway. So, but if you feel strongly about that, and again, there's a, if you don't have it, we'll make sure you get it. Your comments on the little questionnaire sheet, we're going to want those. These are all good comments, and these are a good discussion. It's important to also write this down for us so that we can compile and have this information.
When do you need these by?
I'm going to ask that those be returned in 1 week. So it does give you a little time to ponder this if you want to think about it a little more. So the 16th, we'll ask that they be returned. You can drop them off here, put them in the Dropbox.
And are these going to be available on the website for those who aren't attending any meetings that they can provide?
We'll put those forms along with the presentation on the website. So that is our intention.
It is, so when you go to the website, oh gosh, hold on a second. There we go. So here's the website. Here's our button for Bayfield Reconstruction Project. And then this is the information about today's meeting. Here's the fact sheet. And then right there is that form.
Thank you. I'll make sure to post it on Facebook.
If it comes up.
We'll do another post on that as well, so you can share that.
There it is.
I'm wondering about the 6th Avenue East left turn lane, coming from Bayfield, turning into Memorial there.
Okay.
Has that been identified as a stopping point for traffic? Well, I mean, I assume a lot of people from the campground go up to Bayfield, they come back and they try and turn in there, but I'm just not sure if it's been a clogging point in the past.
We're not aware of it being a serious issue at this time. If others in that neighborhood feel differently, please chime in.
I don't see that an issue. I don't see the people coming from Bayfield and turning. The issue I see is the right hand to Memorial Park. People stop turning left to the nursing home. People with Minnesota plates zooming past them on the right, hitting the shoulder and almost our mailboxes, already going 40 miles an hour. Or 50.
So they're treating the right turn lane.
The right turn to Memorial Park they're using, because many people turn up to Northern Lights at 6th Avenue.
I did want to point that out too.
It's horrible.
For turn lanes in one sense, but I think people, they learn behavior as they're going through town, and if they see those turn lanes, they're going to learn this notion that you go past people, whether they're, somebody's turning, they go past, well, the next one that doesn't have one, they're going to possibly then, have that in their head, and then they can go around on the right. So I think we're also creating learned behaviors as we
It's
decide
horrible.
these things.
And I pull out to come into town, and I come up to the stop sign, and someone is coming through that turn lane going straight to Bayfield, and it's been closed several times.
You
Maybe
can,
they're speeding up.
Maybe there's something you can do on the road with painting that has like turn arrows throughout that lane or
we
something
can,
like
I
that.
can check with the state, see if we can put up like a right turn only.
That's what it needs to be, because they're past 6th Avenue East, they're on the shoulder, they're coming close to our mailboxes.
I would see that area more as a pedestrian need than maybe the left turn lane.
Yeah, I don't see the left turn to the park, but there's many people turning up to Northern Lights there too.
Any other thoughts? This is your time.
I, for one, would like to say thank you very much for the information on the project here. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll have another session tonight, and so pass it along, and again, please complete those forms within a week and return them. 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Is what I added to this, because, they'll have to give you